very, he was loving, um, very entertaining, always good company. He was able to write as well as live a, enjoy life too.
Oh, he was always very nice and cordial and funny, but he was always working too and concentrating on his work. The unusual part was he was always home. I mean, I know he went to the office from 9 to 1, but he was home most afternoons.
Yeah, he was a great father. He was really lots of fun. One thing about one other characteristic of his profession, unlike most of my friends whose fathers went off to work and came back at 5 and yada yada, was that he was around a lot.
We met in a fine arts course at Harvard when I was a senior and he was a sophomore, I believe. And we it was a course in medieval art, sculpture mostly, I think. And we got talking after class, and sometimes we'd go out for coffee, and we both smoked. And he was a very busy student and very active on the Lampoon and writing lots of papers for his courses. He was in the English department. And we got to know each other quite well over that spring term. And in the summer, he had to go back to Pennsylvania to work at the Reading Eagle, which is his usual summer job. And I stayed in Cambridge, and we corresponded and kept up our relationship by mail. And then I guess during the summer we began to think, well, really, we liked each other a lot.
It was kind of, you're proud of him, but it was also kind of annoying at times, and people didn't really look at you. They were looking at your famous father, who was sort of there in the background the whole time. There was some concrete advantages. I mean, his success got us to travel, got us to England, got us to the vineyard in the summers. And that was a benefit, and it got us all into private schools that not everyone can afford. So there was advantages and disadvantages, we'll put it that way.
Honestly, we didn't know he was famous. In fact, he wasn't famous when I was born, although, I wasn't conscious of him being famous. I think we started to become aware as kids. I'm the youngest of 4. We became aware of his fame probably when in 1967 or so. I think I was 7 or 6, and we were photographers came to the house. My father had just written Rabbit Run, I think, and we were photographed and put on the cover of Life magazine. And I think then it started to dawn on me that my father had a job that was a little bit more unusual than most of my friends.
Life changed because all of a sudden we could afford to buy things that we hadn't been able to before. And he had the security of knowing that what he had always wanted to do with his life was to write and to be published, especially by the New Yorker. So his first aim in life was to get published by the New Yorker, and that happened quite early, soon after we were married, in England. Spent the year in England. He went to an art school. And in the beginning, he couldn't decide whether he wanted to be a cartoonist or a writer. And after a year in art school, I think he decided that he would go for the writing part.
Both my parents wanted to keep our family pretty simple and growing up an average middle class family. My parents entertained some, literary types, so we had a lot of exposure to some other famous people. Kurt Vonnegut came to our house, and John Cheever, to name a couple of other famous writers, American writers. But no, we were really, we were not treated like royalty in any.
When I was in fourth grade, we moved to England for the year, and rather than having, being left up to our own devices on weekends, we would travel throughout England. We'd go to Stonehenge and probably the usual American tourist destinations and mazes and castles and abbeys. And then every vacation or weekends, we'd go to Denmark, or the Christmas one we went to Morocco and traveled down the coast. Or maybe that was spring, because then Christmas we did go to Austria and went skiing in Meyerhofen, Austria, which was nice. And we also went over to Sweden to see my father's Swedish publishers at one point. So there was that, and then other times we traveled to the Caribbean over spring break, and he took my sister Liz, to Tokyo and Australia, and so there was always an opportunity to get away.
The year we were in London, we went to all kinds of countries, Denmark, Holland, Austria, skiing, Morocco in spring vacation, and Paris, Holland. I've said Holland probably. But it was great for the kids, I think, even though they may have been bored around the edges or tired of hotel life.
The bulk of our traveling experience happened right shortly after my father had written Couples, and we spent the year, that year following Couples in London. And during that year, we spent a lot of time going to different countries: Denmark, Holland, France, Morocco. And at that point in my life, I'm going to have to say it was a little bit of a drag. I was a little bit too young to fully appreciate the wonderful benefits of travel. And I was often, if we drove in the car to any place, I was frequently car sick. So that was a little bit of a bummer. But I still have very fond memories of traveling, in little snippets.
Sort of shocked, surprised, sad. I think the usual things that everyone feels when their parents get divorced. And, I just assumed they had a reasonably good marriage, a solid marriage. And so when it was announced it wasn't quite a solid marriage, it was sort of, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Like everyone, you still deal with it for the rest of your life.
Not well. I did not like that at all. And to this day, I still don't understand it.
That's a very complicated question. We were married for 21 years. And we were very compatible in most ways. I think that, I think you'd have to, I think that's sort of a private question.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned.
Did you ever regret the decision to get divorced?
Oh, yes. And I have a feeling he did too.
If our parents were fighting all the time, or there was just serious pressure in the household, it would have made more sense. But I think to a certain extent my parents just needed to experience other things, especially my father as a writer. I think part of his needing to move on had to do with his first love, which has always been writing.
Seeing the paradigm of a father who works at home and works out of the house, and produces or creates things out of whole cloth, I think that model is something I may have taken to heart. And although I work visually in visual arts and sculpture, I think that's part of it that has stuck by me, that I've learned from him, for better or worse, I may say. Working out of the home has its advantages and disadvantages as well.
Yeah, I would say so. I think my father is a realist, and his writing usually works around the middle class, the common American. For many years, the focus on my art, which is, I'm a painter, has been in that same sort of arena. I like to find beautiful things in the ordinary. So I'm a representational artist, or have been up until this past summer, and very similar to the same sort of idea that my father had for writing, I would say. Yeah. The other thing I'd like to add about my father as a writer and how it influenced me as an artist. I think I've always felt, having seen my father work and how he works and how he was committed to working a certain number of hours, and he could prioritize. I feel as though I've been given that ability to be self-disciplined and creative.